Today's lesson is called Spite Houses, Built on Emotion. Hi everyone, my name is Jeff.
My name is Roger, and today we're going to talk about architecture, and maybe some of you are studying architectural engineering, and you want to design buildings or houses in the future. And so if that is the case, if that is your career choice, you might want to know what spite houses are. They're houses that are built on emotion. So basically, if you get really angry or really sad, or maybe you miss somebody or something like that, a house will magically appear. Is that what a spite house is?
I have no idea. I know what a house is, and I know what spite is. But I've never heard of someone building a house because of spite. Okay, and as far as your explanation is concerned, I'm not sure of that either. I think we can only really gain clarity on any of this by reading today's article, because this sounds strange. Building a house is not easy. It's a hard thing to do if you do it by hand, and if you pay other people to do it, it's extremely expensive. So if you build a house or pay someone to build a house just to say nah, 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 nah to somebody else, you're either wasting a lot of money or you're wasting a lot of effort. It just doesn't make any sense. So spite houses, built on emotion, how curious, how strange. I'm a little bit confused, but also a little bit interested. So let's go ahead and read today's article and get to the bottom of things. We'll be back after this.
Spite houses, built on emotion. Your city probably contains at least one architectural oddity, a building that fascinates locals and tourists alike. While many of these buildings were intentionally designed to impress, you may be surprised to learn that others were built purely out of spite.
大家好，第一部分我们看到形容词 architectural 指建筑的、建筑学的。例如 The building's design was not up to the neighborhood's architectural standards. 这栋大楼的设计不符合该社区的建筑标准。另外，这个字的字尾加上 ly 就成了副词 architecturally， 意思是建筑上。举例来说 The bridge was architecturally important because it was the first of its kind to be built. 这座桥在建筑上而言非常重要，因为它是同类建筑中的第一座。再来，我们看到单字 oddity， 这个字是名词，指怪人、怪事，像是 In America, watermelon milk is an oddity. 在美国，西瓜牛奶是很奇特的饮料。另外，补充这个字的副词 oddly, O-D-D-L-Y, oddly指奇特的、古怪的，像是 oddly enough 就表示说出来也奇怪，奇怪的是。举例来说 Oddly enough, Kevin was 20 years older than his great aunt. 说也奇怪 Kevin 比他姑妈老20岁。接着我们看到动词 fascinate 指深深吸引、迷住。例如 The puppet show fascinated the young audience. 木偶秀让年轻观众看得入迷。或是Roy has been fascinated by dinosaurs ever since he was a little boy. Roy 从小就对恐龙深深着迷。另外，补充这个字的形容词 fascinating, F-A-S-C-I-N-A-T-I-N-G, fascinating 指吸引人的、很有趣的，像是 Jessica is conducting some fascinating research into the nature and meaning of dreams. Jessica 在进行一些关于自然和梦境意义的有趣研究。
Okay, let's get to it. Let's talk about the contents of our article for today. We'll talk about the first part right now. Again, we're talking about spite houses. Houses that are built on emotion. They were built because someone was mad at somebody else. It's very possible for people to build houses or buildings because they want to show off. I suppose that is a house that's built on emotion. You just want to let somebody else feel bad while you feel good. That is possible. I think most buildings are built for practical reasons. But these are houses that are built because someone is angry with somebody. Let's find out what this is all about. Your city probably contains at least one architectural oddity, a building that fascinates locals and tourists alike. So, yes, we've got something that has to do with architecture. So we're going to use the adjective architectural, and then we've got the word oddity. Okay, an oddity is something that is quite strange.
That's weird. Yeah, that's weird.
It's weird. It's really unusual, and hopefully my explanation here is not weird or unusual. But yes, indeed, an oddity, something that you just don't expect. It's just really, really weird. Think about it in your city. Is there a really weird building in, say, Jiayi or Zhanghua or Tainan? What's the weirdest building there? What is an architectural oddity in your city?
So we have an architectural oddity, a building that fascinates locals and tourists alike. So you might pass this building 10 times and then at some point you stop and you go, that building, it just sticks out in my mind for some reason. It's so strange, but at the same time, so interesting. I've got to stop and look at it because now I'm fascinated by it. By the way, yes, if you are really curious about something, really interested about something, you are fascinated about that thing.
Exactly. So this building will fascinate locals as well as tourists. So it will fascinate locals and tourists alike. Alike here just means both, and you usually put the word alike at the end of the sentence in this particular case. This food is enjoyed by locals and tourists alike. They both like it. And while many of these buildings were intentionally designed to impress, like Taipei 101, you may be surprised to learn that others were built purely out of spite. So yes, many of these buildings were built to impress people. We just want to be different here. These buildings are always kind of square and boring. We want to build something that people will notice. We want to impress other people. And perhaps they were built intentionally that way, which means you meant to do it that way. You weren't doing it for practical reasons.
You know, sometimes you do things to impress other people. You might show off a little bit, and that's okay. You do that on purpose. But to build a house intentionally to spite someone or in spite of someone, gosh, that's weird, man. So it says here that some of these buildings, they were built intentionally just to spite someone. They were built purely out of spite. They were built on this very negative emotion. How interesting. Anyways, let's go ahead and learn about some of these spite houses. We'll do so after a short break.
One of America's best-known spite houses is Boston's Skinny House, a narrow 4-story home squeezed between 2 brick buildings. It's believed to have been built in the 1800s by a man who returned from the Civil War to discover his brother had constructed a large home on their shared land, leaving only a tiny sliver for him. To get revenge, he built a house on the last bit of land, thus blocking his brother's views and sunlight. Another famous spite house is the Tyler Spite House in Frederick, Maryland. Upon learning that the city was planning to build a street through his land, Dr. John Tyler took matters into his own hands. Legally, roads could not be built through a construction site, so he paid contractors to pour a foundation immediately. When city construction crews arrived the next morning, they found the foundation and perhaps a smug-looking Tyler.
第二部分我们看到单字 sliver， 这个字是名词，指一小块、一小片东西，像是 May I have that tiny sliver of chocolate？ 我可以吃那一小片巧克力吗？再来，我们看到形容词 smug， 指沾沾自喜、自鸣得意的。例如 Tracy felt a bit smug about her new finding in the lab。 Tracy 对于自己在实验室里的新发现感到有点沾沾自喜。
Okay, so again, we're talking about spite houses, and these are houses that were built Out of spite. And that seems to be the phrase for today's lesson, to do something out of spite, to do something just to make the other person angry, just because you want to get revenge on them. So let's talk about an example in Boston in the United States. One of America's best-known spite houses is Boston's Skinny House, a narrow 4-story home squeezed between 2 brick buildings. So this is a well-known spite house. It is in the city of Boston, famous for the Boston Tea Party, and they've got some other historical sites there as well. It's probably worth a visit there if you're going to Harvard. Just pop over to Boston there and check it out. And there's going to be a narrow 4-story home there. So it's narrow, it's not very wide, and it's 4 stories tall. It has 4 floors, basically, and it is squeezed between 2 brick buildings. So the verb squeeze here just means you kind of push something narrower from both sides, okay? If you're in a movie theater, for example, and your seat is between really 2 fat people, then you need to squeeze into your seat. It's going to be difficult to get into that seat because there are 2 really fat people on either side of you.
Anyways, we've got this skinny house, and it's a 4-story home, and it's squeezed between these 2 brick buildings. Sounds okay to me. Where does the spite come in? Well, it's believed to have been built in the 1800s by a man who returned from the Civil War to discover his brother had constructed a large home on their shared land. So they owned it together, but his brother here kind of built a big house and took over the land, so to speak, leaving only a tiny sliver for him. And a sliver, by the way, is a narrow strip of something. That's what a sliver means here. So he only had this narrow strip of land. I imagine the brother said, "Hey, I'll pay you for it. Here, just take some money and go away." But instead, the brother who came back from the Civil War said, "No, I'm going to spite you, and I'm going to build this spite house on this sliver of land," or he constructed this house. Yes, you can build a house or construct a house. So here, one brother constructed a large home, the other constructed a spite house. Yes, to get revenge, he built a house on the last bit of land, thus blocking his brother's views and sunlight. There you go. There's some good spite for you.
Yeah, I guess I don't blame him. You know, he went off to the Civil War to fight the South there, and he was putting his life on the line. And what does his brother do? Builds a house without him knowing about it. So, yes, he wanted to get revenge on his brother, and so he built that squeeze house, that skinny house there to spite his brother. Thus, he was blocking his brother's views and sunlight. So here the word thus just means therefore. He therefore blocked his brother's views. His brother could not get a view of Boston Harbor or something like that. And it also blocked the sunlight, so he could not hang his laundry out in the sunlight to dry faster. It would be in the shade, and it would dry much more slowly that way.
I'm sure that did happen. Anyways, let's move on here and talk about the Tyler Spite House in Frederick, Maryland. Yes, another famous spite house is the Tyler Spite House in Frederick, Maryland. Upon learning that the city was planning to build a street through his land, Dr. John Tyler took matters into his own hands. That is, he did something himself that probably should have been handled by the authorities. Legally, roads could not be built through a construction site, so he paid contractors to pour a foundation immediately.
Right away, immediately, indeed. So that, again, is another example of a spite house. This one is in Maryland. Construction, of course, is when something is being built. To build something is a common term, but the more formal term is to construct. They're constructing a new building in the city, for example. So what did he do? He paid those contractors, and those are people who have contracts architects to build something, and they were going to pour the foundation for a house. The foundation is just the basic structure of a house. I guess it's all that cement.
So there you go. When city construction crews arrived the next morning, they found the foundation and perhaps a smug-looking Tyler. Yeah, guys, what are you going to do now? This is officially a construction site. You can't build a road. You thought you'd be building a road through my land. No dice. Guys, look how smug I am, and look at this foundation. This is evidence of a house being built. Ergo, a construction site. What are you going to do? You guys aren't from the state, apparently, or the Commonwealth. You're from the city. It doesn't matter. You can't build a road here.
Yeah, that's a good example of being smug, which means you're basically really, really proud of yourself. You could be smug, for example, if you win a speech contest or something like that, but you probably should be a little more humble in that particular instance. Okay, let's move on now to the third and final part of our lesson. We'll listen to it first.
Building an entire house out of spite may be excessive, but it has resulted in some unique buildings. These houses should serve not only as reminders of the great lengths that some people go to in order to spite others, but also as testaments to human creativity.
最后第三部分，我们看到单字 testament 这个字是名词，指证明、证据，常写作 a testament to 加名词，像是 Dino's success in life is a testament to his hard work. Dino 有个成功的人生，这是他努力工作的证据。或是 These poems are a testament to how much the poet loved the English language. 这些诗词证明了那名诗人有多爱英语。
Okay, this is a good way to put it. Building an entire house out of spite may be excessive, but it has resulted in some unique building. So it doesn't really make sense. Are you going too far when you build an entire house out of spite? Yes, it's excessive to do so. But this has happened. Some interesting buildings have come about as a result of it, of the practice of building spite houses, as weird as it might sound.
Yeah, doing this might seem excessive. It might just be too much. Couldn't you just let it go and not build a house just to make somebody angry? Yes, it just seems too much. It's excessive. But still, it has resulted in some kind of unusual buildings. So to result in something just means, hey, that's what happens because of something else. What did it result in? What happened as a result? And these houses should serve not only as reminders of the great lengths that some people go to in order to spite others, but also as testaments to human creativity. So yes, they are reminders that some people really hate other people. It's a reminder of that. This still goes on. There are rivalries going on. So it's a reminder of the great lengths, the great effort that people will take to get revenge on somebody. But still, it's a testament to human creativity. Without that spite, we wouldn't have these unusual houses to look at and take pictures of and post on social media. So, yes, a testament just means kind of proof of something.
Proof or evidence in creativity, an instance where people have applied their imagination to something and they've created something or made something like a piece of art or a spite house in this particular situation. Anyways, folks, with that, our lesson is now in the books, and it's time for you guys to hear from the Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天文章里面的5个题目。第一个题目是 While many of these buildings were intentionally designed to impress, you may be surprised to learn that 空格 were built purely out of spite. 虽然这些建筑物当中有很多都是故意要让人印象深刻，但你也许会很惊讶的得知空格 则纯粹是出于恶意而兴建的。好，那么4个选项分别是 A. the others, B. still others, C. those, D. others。 好，从语义上来看，我们用选项 C. those 来表达说那些建筑是出于恶意兴建，这并不符合文意，我们可以先删除不考虑了。那其他3个选项含有代名词 others 都可以用来指称复数可数名词，只是它们用法不太一样哦。在没有特定范围里面呢，要列举出2种群体的状况，我们可以用 some 怎么样 others 怎么样来表达有些怎么样，有些怎么样。好，那如果要列举3种群体，只要再加上 still others 就可以表达还有一些怎么样。好，那么在特定范围里面，我们可以用 some 怎么样 the others 怎么样来表达有些怎么样怎么样，那剩下的那一些怎么样怎么样。好，根据题目的意思，它是在没有特定的范围里面去列举出2种群体2类奇怪建筑的兴建原因，所以空格里面应该填入 the others。 好，再我们看到第2个题目是One of America's best-known spite houses is Boston's Skinny House, a narrow 4-story home, 空格 between 2 brick buildings。 美国最知名的恶意房屋之一是波士顿的瘦楼 Skinny House， 一间空格在2栋砖楼之间的4层楼狭窄房屋。那4个选项是动词 squeeze 的不同变化，分别是 A. squeezed, B. was squeezed, C. being squeezed, D. squeezing。从句子结构来看，有没有发现逗号后方这个 a narrow 4-story home 这部分它是名词同位语，用来补充说明前方的 Boston Skinny House。 好，那既然 a narrow 4-story home 这部分是名词同位语，我们就可以推测空格以及后方的字词其实就是用来修饰这个 a narrow 4-story home 4层楼狭窄房屋。好，假设我们用关系子句来修饰，那可以写作 a narrow 4-story home which was squeezed 或是 that was squeezed between 2 brick buildings。 再来，我们还可以把关系子句简化成分词片语，那这时候它的步骤是省略主格关系代名词，然后把动词的部分改分词，主动我们就用现在分词 VING， 被动就用过去分词 PP。 所以刚刚那个关系子句里面这个which was squeezed 或是 that was squeezed 其实可以直接简化成 squeezed， 那就会写作 a narrow 4-story home squeezed between 2 brick buildings。 所以这题的答案我们就要选 A squeezed。 好，再看到第3个题目是 To get revenge, he built a house on the last bit of land 逗号空格 blocking his brother's views and sunlight。 好，这题是要考我们副词。我们先来看选项 A instead 表示作为代替，反之相反地， B just 表示刚才只是， C thus 表示因此从而怎么样怎么样， D otherwise 表示否则或是用来表达以别的方式。好，从语义上来看，空格的前方是说为了报复，他在仅剩的一小块土地上盖了一间房子。空格后面是说阻挡了他兄弟的视野和日照，这前后语义是带有因果关系的，因此最适合的答案是 C thus 可以表达因此怎么样，从而怎么样。第4个题目是空格 Learning that the city was planning to build a street through his land, Dr. John Tyler took matters into his own hands。 好，题目意思是说空格得知市政府计划建造一条街道穿过他的土地， John Tyler 医生决定自己来解决这个问题。那这题是在考我们介系词，先来看选项 A besides 当介系词它表示除了什么什么之外，它就跟 in addition to 意思相同。 B upon 表示一怎么样就怎么样， C with a view to 什么什么表示为了怎么样以便怎么样， D despite 可以表达尽管虽然。从语义上来看，介系词 upon 是最适合的，它可以表达出 John Tyler 医生一得知市政府的计划就决定怎么样怎么样，其他3个介系词都不符合文意，所以我们这题答案选 B upon。 第5个题目是 Building an entire house out of spite may be 空格 but it has resulted in some unique buildings。 为了泄愤而盖一间房子或许空格，但也造就了一些奇特的建筑。 那这题是来考我们字汇，先来看选项 A imaginary 表示想象中的虚构的， B revolutionary 表示革命性的，产生重大变革的或是革命的， C excessive 是形容过分的过度的， D productive 富有成效的，具有生产力的。那这题应该很好选，为了泄愤你就盖一栋房子，这个做法似乎太过头，很像我们平常会讲说太 over 了吧。好，那这时候我们就用 excessive 来描述它是过分的过度的，是比较符合文意的，其他3个选项都不符合，那这题我们就要选 C excessive。 好，以上是今天的课漏字讲解，接着我们回顾单字吧。
Architectural.This software is used to create architectural drawings and plans. Fascinate. I don't know why, but movies about time travel fascinate me. Intentionally. Multiple choice tests have answers that are intentionally designed to trick students. Construct. The government decided to construct a bridge over the river. Contractor. William offered the contractor some coffee while they took a break. Foundation.Tim
ordered 2 loads of concrete for the foundation of his new house.
Reminder. Sue kept the picture as a reminder of the time she had spent with Tom. Creativity. These writing activities are supposed to encourage creativity.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you guys enjoyed reading and learning along with us. I am Jeff.
I am Roger.
See you next time.